Hello! Following a recent request, we're tackling a new topic, publishing. I started publishing my manga 12 years ago, so today I propose you to discover different facets with big and small publishing houses, different variants of self-publishing, and the opportunities and sales that can come from it. If you're new around here and want to monetize your illustrations, subscribe and activate the little notification bell to go from art to business every Tuesday at 6 p.m. I'd love to have you around. Anyways, let's get started. As a beginner, many might have the dream to be published by a big publishing company, to make a lot of sales in bookshops, to have signing sessions with raving fans queuing for you. Or is it just me who had these unrealistic expectations? Well, I'm starting this video with the most difficult option because it's not easy to get in with a big publisher, but it's possible. Here we are talking about houses like Kana, Dark Horse, Tokyopop and others, more related to manga and comics. So first of all, yes, we are not in Japan. Being a mangaka is more difficult here. The publishers in Europe buy Japanese licenses that are already successful there, and it's less risky and cheaper to buy a license that works already than to bet on a random stranger for a new series where everything is still to do. That being said, some of these publishers are still open to the possibility of publishing local authors. The French publisher Kaufmann, for example, regularly organizes its Tremplin Manga contest, and Tokyopop Germany seems to be very supportive towards German mangaka. Or some publishers also have a submission page on their website where you can send them your project file. So far I've always been refused, but even if that happens to you, ask for feedback. If a publisher takes the time to write to you, even if it's a rejection email, you have their contact to write to them directly, like to the publisher, not a secretary or a random person in the office. Of course, don't use it to bother them, but if it's not mentioned in the refusal, send a little email to thank the editor for taking the time to analyze your file and ask why it was rejected. What can you do better? Because you're really motivated. In 90% of the cases, they will answer you, even if it's just with a quick bullet list. But this feedback will be so valuable because it comes from a professional of the industry who knows what they're talking about, who knows what is needed to succeed, and who will be able to tell you where your weaknesses are. Is it layout, anatomy, coloring? I really wish you the best of luck with a big publisher, but be aware that, especially if you're just starting out, it will be more difficult to get in. Having a publisher who distributes you in bookstores, sells your book at fairs, organizes signing sessions, and more can be a great opportunity. However, now, assuming you're not ready for the big houses yet, but you don't want to self-publish, there is a solution in between. There are lots of small independent publishing houses, which can be very interesting. On the one hand, there will be the more specialized publishers with, for instance, only written novels or other comics, manga, graphic novels, for example. On the other hand, there will be more general publishers who propose different collections, styles, and could have like children books, fantasy novels, comics, and others all under the same roof. Again, you can always see if they have any open submissions to submit a project. And even if they don't have a specific page for new book submissions, unless they're explicitly writing that they're refusing anything new at the moment, send it anyway through their contact page. At worst, they will ignore you or turn you down, but you never know, maybe they will be interested. I always assume that nothing ventured, nothing gained, so you might as well give it a try if it's what you really want to do. But it's important to consider what kind of publishing house you're dealing with before sending. Looking at the catalog, do you think that your work would fit their editorial line? For instance, if it's a publisher that mainly publishes illustrated children books, it's unlikely that your horror manga following the tracks of a serial killer would fit in. And it would be disrespectful to contact them because, yeah, it just shows that you're not interested at all in what their company does, in their company values, and that you only see your own interests. Remember, not any publisher will do. If you're with the wrong publisher, with the wrong target audience, you're going to have a very hard time selling your books, even if they're amazing. So before you send in your submissions, make sure your work is a good fit for the publishing companies you want to contact. Each publisher will have its own rules, its own conditions, and here are a few practices I've noted from various encounters over the years to give you an idea of what to expect. Most publishing houses are small structures, often managed by a single person, possibly helped by a spouse or a limited team, for instance a graphic designer or a translator or proofreader. The advantage is that it is often very familial and warm. You keep a human and personal contact. Disadvantage, if you can call it like that, is that it doesn't allow for industrial mass production and things can sometimes move more slowly because the editor takes on a lot of work alone or in small groups with a smaller and local distribution. Concerning payment, it varies from one publisher to another, but it seems that most of the small structures, being small, don't always have the means to pay the authors from the get-go and only finance the expenses related to the printing and the publishing of the book. If you create your manga or comic for money, then I'm sorry, forget it. Some publishers will be willing to pay for your work, but often with a fixed, identical and non-negotiable rate for every single author. In most cases, however, you will have to wait for the first sales to be paid. At that point, you will receive a percentage per book sold, which varies from 6 to 12%, depending on the publisher, sometimes monthly, quarterly, or even annually. If you want to earn money in the meantime, you have the possibility of buying a stock of books from the publisher at author's price. Often this will be the printing price and can usually be around 50% of the retail price. You can then resell it at full retail price anywhere you want, like family, friends, online store, conventions and more. Now, some smaller companies seem to be aware of the limitations of their small structures, and I have the feeling that, especially in the French-speaking room at least, they are trying to find solutions to better support their authors. For instance, Edition H2T started small, offering a little fee per chapter to the artists, first with an online publishing that does not incur many costs, then with paper prints when there are enough chapters for a finished volume to be sold in libraries. Others will turn to crowdfunding like Le Héros d'Argent with its illustrated books and Tartamudo Edition with the manga Rose. It allows to test the interest of the public, to have pre-orders and also to get some financing for the printing and even a nice paycheck for the author in case of a successful campaign which exceeded its initial funding goals. While we're on the subject of money, note that generally it's the publisher who takes care of financing the printing of your books. Even if you don't get paid, you don't have to pay anything out of your pocket, which is already a great advantage. Beware, there is what is called vanity publishing, which means that the publisher agrees to publish your book, but asks for money to print it, or even administrative fees to represent you, and doesn't necessarily take into account what you're writing or drawing. I was once offered a contract where I was asked to pay more than 1,000 euros and it was very shady, so avoid it. A publisher is there to support you, not to take money from you before you even start working together. Last but not least, with publishing companies, you focus on the creation and the publisher takes care of the behind-the-scenes stuff, like lettering, layout, legal deposit, printing, which by the way takes a lot of time and can be difficult to manage when you have never published a book before. Depending on the publisher's network, your book can be distributed in bookstores or taken to fairs, or even the authors can be present for book signings in bookstores or conventions where the publisher will have a booth. Now, and I think this is super important to say to avoid potential disappointments, a publisher is not a guarantee for success. Maybe they'll sell you a lot of books in bookstores, maybe you'll end up selling most of your books in your personal online store by yourself. Maybe your publisher will participate in a lot of book fairs to which you will be invited for signings, maybe they won't do any promotion at all. When I signed my first publishing contract for my manga Ortalium with Demdel Edition, them days. I drew those 200 pages non-stop for 6 months before I got my first money from sales. I was expecting an explosion of sales in bookshops, invitations to cons all over Belgium, and indeed they organized events where I participated at their booth or at a personal booth reserved to my name, but it was still local. And it was normal because it is a small family structure that does its best with the resources and the time and money they have to support their authors. It may not have been the red carpet and big time glory I was expecting, but it was a great adventure that allowed me to meet some lovely people and get some new opportunities. Once again, drawing comics will not make you rich, so especially when you start, really do it because you love it and because you have a wonderful story to share. The easiest way that most people you meet at manga and comic cons are taking right now is self-publishing. More flexibility, more freedom, but also the fact that you have to manage everything from beginning to the end. And there are several ways to self-publish depending on your needs, which we will see right now. Going through a self-publishing website can be very convenient since these websites are designed specifically for books. Most of the time, the site guides you through the process, provides templates for the layout, etc. Once the book is published, you can buy it at the production weight and resell it yourself. And in most cases, it will also be available for sale directly on the site for everyone or even through resellers like Amazon. This can be a nice way to reach out to a new audience, but don't count on it too much. Having published 5 books this way, I assure you that in 12 years I have never ever seen a single sale on these platforms. So yeah. Some examples of websites might be Book on Demand, Lulu, the Book Edition, Tradition, and others. Another advantage too is that these sites often operate on a print-on-demand basis, meaning that there is no stock, but the book is only printed if someone places an order. This allows you to test small quantities, perfect for a first proofreading or to test the waters. As an example, my very first illustrated novel cost me about 16 to 20 euros for a first copy, if I remember correctly. When I advertised it at school, I got some first orders, and having proofread my own copy, I was able to correct any spelling and layout mistakes before reprinting orders for my relatives. This basically means you have 0 stock, you only print the copies you need. Another way to do this is to work with a general printer. This usually allows more follow-up with a contact person to guide you and more special papers and print options, which are not available with online publishing sites. A good tip if you are just starting out is to see if you can find a local printer. It may cost a little more, but we make so many mistakes in the beginning, and having a professional to guide you through your first steps is so handy. By the way, the next video will deal with the mistakes to avoid when self-publishing manga or comics, with some tips on how to sell well, so don't forget to subscribe if you're interested in the topic. Anyway, being advised by a local printer is really a good choice to start with a first product that will really look like something. Often local printers will also let you print smaller quantities, again perfect for testing at first, especially if you don't have much of an audience yet. The first time I wanted to test a full color comic, I went through a local printer that unfortunately no longer exists, because I was totally lost with all the online options. The printer was able to advise me and even did a test print on 2 different papers and improved my layout for a nicer product, and was always available for small reprints when I needed new stock once a year. As I was paying up front and storing everything at home, I was more comfortable having smaller quantities because it just felt less risky. Of course, as you grow your audience over the years, you'll be able to tackle larger quantities and more special prints. However, this will be another budget and a much larger stock. Bigger printing companies often ask for a minimum order quantity, which can vary between 200 and 1000 copies from what I have seen. Because of this, once you have an audience, many artists turn to crowdfunding to raise the funds for pre-orders. Once again, as we said before, it's a great idea to see the interest and already have sales that fund the printing of the project. Another option is Amazon KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. Similar to print on demand, you create your book on Amazon's interface and they take care of putting it on sale and print it when an order is placed. Again, no step for you, but you can order copies if you want to sell them yourself. I've never tried this option, but I know artists who have used it, so maybe it's interesting for you. In any case, most of the manga and books you'll see at Artist Alley tables will be done with self-publishing because it's just the most accessible and is what will allow you to have the most freedom. But remember that you have to do the layouts, finance the printing, store, distribute, sell and more all by yourself. Having worked with a small publisher with a 3-year contract before going back to self-publishing, I think that in the end the two are kinda similar. In both cases, I mainly did my own sales at festivals. The advantage of working with a publisher was that the printing was very flexible depending on my needs, and they took care of all the small, not very creative tasks. The advantage of self-publishing is the total control I have over my sales and prices and the freedom to do what I want. For example, to keep a webcomic online despite having a paper version. It all depends on your preferences in the end. And to help you, if your choice is still not clear, I prepared some worksheets with the right questions to ask yourself, a summary of the advantages and disadvantages of each publishing mode, and a list of the resources mentioned in this video. You can download this in the link in the description. It's completely free and really designed to help you. So there you have it. Now I'd love to hear from you. What solution are you considering for your own publishing? Have you ever worked with a publisher or self-published? Please share your experience in the comments so that we can all get inspired and motivate each other. If you like this video, please leave it a little thumbs up, and if you want to dive deep into the topic, the next video will deal in more detail with self-publishing and the silly mistakes to avoid in order to sell more easily and have a pretty book. So subscribe! There's a new episode every Tuesday at 6 p.m. to grow from art to business, alternating every other week with an English video and then its French podcast version. In the meantime, use your little workbook in the description, so wishing you good luck and see you soon.